This has become a big concern for fans and some players alike, and it's across multiple competitions. Pat Cummins spoke publicly about the boycotting of the government body's partnership with Alinta Energy. Now, Fremantle Dockers fans are calling for their club to drop its Woodside Energy sponsorship, saying having a fossil fuel company as a major sponsor is no longer appropriate. So joining me live now is Independent MP Zali Steggall. Thanks so much for your time, Zali. I'm really interested to talk to you because you come at this from two perspectives. You have been a professional athlete, you know how important sponsorship is, but now you're an independent MP that has a platform on climate change. So where do you sit on this one?
Look, I do recognise it is a problem. It's sport washing. We recognise that there was a real social impact and a social licence that comes from sponsoring sport. We recognised it in relation to tobacco companies and alcohol companies, where we know there is a very detrimental effect on our society from a health point of view. And it was recognised that sponsorship of sport by those type of companies, tobacco and alcohol, was had a really negative impact. So the sport gave them social licence and acceptance that was counterintuitive to the health impacts they then have on our society. And ultimately, we have to pay for those health impacts with increased health costs and major issues. So but of course, as my sports hat and sports person, I recognise sport is incredibly expensive and you need sponsors. And that argument was raised at the time where you dropped tobacco and alcohol sponsorship. So it is about that balance between the funding of sport and recognising the role it plays, and that's where I think government needs to step in and properly fund it and not leave it to these private sort of sponsorships, where now you're seeing fossil fuels really greenwashing and sports washing the nature and the impact they have on society.
Can you really compare alcohol and tobacco, though, to energy companies?
Well, unfortunately you can, because we do know that from a carbon emissions point of view, and high emitting companies are having a huge impact on our long-term health. So yes, you can compare it because they are doing it from the very same playbook. So fossil fuel companies have spent the last 10 years, very much like tobacco companies, issuing a lot of papers denying the impacts of emissions and climate change and delaying, society's acceptance of the need to do something about this. So fossil fuel companies have done exactly the same playbook.
Sorry to interrupt here. Sure, but the reality is we still rely on fossil fuels, and we're going to do so for the next couple of decades, and that's just a reality in terms of keeping the lights on. We all want to, see net zero, but that's not going to happen for a little while. So can't sporting teams have that same transition, if you like?
Well, absolutely. And sporting codes are themselves making commitments to net zero, to reducing emissions through their operations, offsetting emissions when they attend events and things like that. And I think energy companies have a responsibility to transition to lower emissions energy production.
And many of them are doing that, aren't they? Like BHP, for example.
Well, they are and they're not. The reality is they're not as quickly as they need to be. They have access to more technology and they could be doing more. And it is this balance and it is the tension with gaining social license to try and say, look, we're clean, we're as clean as we can be, and we're committing to be good social citizens. And look, we're sponsoring sports, so we're healthy and we're fit. When the reality is it is having a long-term negative impact on sport and on health. Look, reality is global sport will be seriously impacted on the trajectory of warming that we're on. So the sports that are engaging with this, I think, need to. But what's interesting is also the tension between sporting teams and the rights of the individual athlete, and where that is now. There's a real tension in how that's managed.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you have in your mind what an acceptable company for sponsorship is now? Because it's really hard to see where that line is, isn't it?
Well, no, I think where you have industries that are very much recognised as very detrimental to social health, and we then pay for that social health impact, I think there's a real question of the appropriateness of being allowed to align yourself with sport. So
But
for
I
me,
think about,
absolutely
there's
tobacco,
Bitcoin,
alcohol.
there's Bitcoin platforms that sponsor teams. Is that okay? A gambling company's okay in your mind?
Well, no, I'm very strongly against gambling advertising in sport. It's, I was on the anti-doping panel where we're looking at the drug use and, cheating in sport. Gambling is absolutely the next scourge when it comes to sport, and is a major problem. We see in some codes, just the amount of advertising is just really damaging because it's also the impact it then has on society. So I think there is no such thing in this day and age of an activity that is free from, I guess, social consequences and impact on society. And so everyone does bear some responsibility, and the codes and the sporting associations do in choosing which sponsors are appropriate sponsors.
Yep, it's a hard one. You said just quickly before that government should step in here. So are you saying the government should fund these teams, there shouldn't be any sponsorship, and essentially taxpayers foot the bill?
Well, no, I'm not. I think that's taking my words to an extreme. What I'm saying is our support of sport through government funding has reduced significantly. I think we probably peaked at the Sydney Olympic Games in 2000. What government does need to do is recognise sport plays a huge role in education and in promoting health and fitness. Now, Australia has an obesity crisis, so the more we can do from a preventative point of view of encouraging a healthier and fitter lifestyle, that is good investment of Australian health and education dollar. So I would argue for some time now, government has not properly valued sport for the role it plays in society, and hasn't really adequately funded a lot of sports.
Okay, Zali Steggall, great to get your perspective on this one. I reckon it is going to be a longer conversation down the track. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.